One of the things you said to me actually on the drive over here, and it's really an interesting thought, and it pertains to what you just said there in the Battle of Mogadishu, is every combat op I've ever been on, you've ever been on, when you stand and you get the perspective of two guys that were there, there's two different perspectives. How you saw that target, and where I think it's really interesting, you brought this up, is sometimes guys are, man, I was just laying steel, I was shooting guys, and sometimes it's, man, I was getting shot at. And they're fucking side by side. And one guy feels he's just laying it out, one guy feels he's taking it. And I think that affects how people leave the mission and deal with it after. And we kind of talked about this and how we worry about some of our guys at our age and the effects of them and the brain and all that. And I think it's common knowledge now with all that. And you've spent a second life working on that. So how did, because that was a pretty brutal mission. We've been on both been on missions where we've lost a lot of brothers, and I think that's always the hardest thing. When you came out of that, how did that affect your life and you personally?
So we talked a little earlier about my background as a kid and how I am absolutely certain that if there's any dude that ever had ADD, it was this dude. And when I left there, it was terrible to lose friends, right? Horrible. But I don't recall, I recall it, but I don't have the capacity to develop on it. I don't have the attention span for it. I really don't. And I'm always trying to focus on the next thing coming. So that was a blessing for me. And I know that not every one of my brothers can say that. There's some people that really were troubled by the events of October 3rd. And I look back on it and, the hardest, second hardest day of my life was losing all my friends, because these were guys that weren't just your brothers in arms. These were people that I'd shared a team room with for 10 years.
Right.
At that point, and I knew their wives, I knew their moms, I knew their dads, I knew their kids. My wife hung out with their families. So it's always hard to lose a colleague and a brother in arm. But when you go through the things we'd been through together for so long, it was very personal. People look at that event and you look at things like D-Day where they lost thousands and thousands of men. And in comparison, Mogadishu wasn't even close. But for me and for the guys that were there, if you die on the beaches of Normandy or in an alley in Somalia, it's the same to you.
Right. That's right.
So in the military history scheme, to put it in perspective, it wasn't that big of an event for us personally. It was. But the second hardest day of my life was losing those guys, going through that. But the hardest day of my life was coming home and seeing what it did to the families.
Right.
My wife, it really, really bothered her. Because, one day we're out there at a team party, having a picnic with kids and wives and these beautiful families. And the next time we do it, she's the only person there with a living husband. And it devastated her, scared her to death. It didn't really, I was, because I had been conditioned and grown up in a special operations community, I'd heard stories over and over and over again of things that had gone bad in Vietnam and things that had gone bad in other conflicts. And so you're kind of mentally conditioned for it to some extent. I don't think you're ever fully ready for it, but at least you know that it can happen. But for the families, they don't fully understand it.